Structure and function of exercise muscle is the first chapter of our textbook. Skeletal muscle tissue. So skeletal muscles are associated with movement of the body. These movements are the result of unique characteristic of skeletal muscle fiber. You must know the unique characteristic of skeletal muscle fiber to understand movement of the body. If you read the first chapter of our text, you can answer the following question. The Liam Hoestra, which kind of mutation? So actually page 28, the first page of our chapter 1, is sidebar highlight 1. Liam Hoestra has a rare genetic condition called myostatin-related muscle hypertrophy, a condition that was first described in an abnormally muscular breed of beef cattle in the late 1990s. I'm going to have a small lecture about this genetic phenomenon for you. Learning objectives for this lecture are to compare and contrast smooth muscle cell, cardiac muscle cell, and skeletal muscle cell, and review the anatomy of skeletal muscle, examine the connective tissue associated with skeletal muscle, review the intracellular organization of skeletal muscle. And you are going to also learn how muscle grow. A link is available at Canvas website. This lecture provides an overview of an understanding of the structure and function of skeletal muscle is basic to an understanding of how the body responds to a single bout of exercise and adapt to physical training. Acute exercise is associated with transient change in metabolic rate, muscle activation, and blood flow, whereas chronic exercise facilitates long-lasting adaptation that ultimately improve physical performance. The human body contains more than 430 muscles in 215 pairs. Our textbook, more than 600 skeletal muscles. The thumb alone is controlled by 9 separate muscles. Chemical composition of a muscle are 75% water, 20% protein, and 5% other. Can you guess 5% other? Inorganic phosphate, AMP, ADP, and ADP. Do you agree? Anything else? Glycogen, fatty acid, as well as calcium, potassium, sodium, and magnesium, etc. Comparison of skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle cell. The contractile cells in the body can be classified into 3 major groups based on the shape, number and position of nuclei, and presence of striation, and whether they are under voluntary or involuntary control. When the heart beats, when partially digested food moves through the intestine, and when the body moves in any way, muscle is involved. These many and varied functions of the muscular system are performed by 3 distinct types of muscle: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is sometimes called involuntary because it is not direct conscious control, spindle-shaped cell, and has lack visible striation. Cardiac muscle is found only in the heart, composing most of the heart structure. Like smooth muscle, it is not under conscious control, and skeletal muscle are under conscious control, elongate cell, and have visible striation. Do you think cardiac muscle has visible striation? Oh, I think so, right? Are you sure? Here, multinucleated muscle cell. Unlike cardiac muscle cell and smooth muscle cell, which have a single nucleus, a skeletal muscle cell contains many nuclei and is referred to as multinucleated. These muscle cells are long and fibrous, so often referred to as a muscle fiber. During development, many smaller cells fuse to form a mature muscle fiber. The nuclei of the fused cells are conserved in the mature cell, thus imparting a multinucleate characteristic to mature muscle cell. This is one of the important characteristics of muscle cell. This is highlighted one is muscle cell of fiber, And as you see, there are many nuclei in the muscle fiber. In a skeletal muscle fiber, each myonucleus is responsible for gene expression in its surrounding cytoplasm. The region of cytoplasm surrounding each myonucleus is called the myonuclear domain. In theory, myonuclear domain should increase in response to resistance training due to muscle hypertrophy, increase in myonuclei, and satellite cell activation. Satellite cells provide additional nuclei within muscle fiber. The satellite cells are located between the basement membrane and the sarcolemma of muscle fiber. When muscle fibers sustain damage or injury result from intense training, particularly eccentric action training, muscle injury can lead to a cascade responses in which satellite cells become activated and proliferate and migrate to the damaged region and fuse to existing myofibers. If you want to read the article written by me about muscle growth, please read this article which I posted on this week's module. Okay, let us see the internal structure of a skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscles are composed of connective tissue and contractile cell. The connective tissue surrounding the entire muscle is the epimysium. Bundle of muscle cells are called fasciculus or fascicle, plural fasciculi. The connective tissue surrounding the fascicle is called perimysium. The connective tissue surrounding the entire muscle is the epimysium. Bundle of muscle cells are called fasciculus or fascicle. The connective tissue surrounding the fascicle is called the perimysium. The connective tissue surrounding the single muscle fiber is called the endomysium. A single muscle fiber consists of myofibril divided into sarcomere. Unlike most cells in the body, which have a single nucleus, but muscle cells are multinucleated. Important points about the endomysium: it surrounds individual muscle cells and functions to electrically insulate a muscle cell from one another. The endomysium is the key element that separates single muscle fibers from one another. Endomysium, perimysium, and epimysium, all three connective tissues bind the muscle cell together, provide strength and support to the entire muscle, and are continuous with the tendons at the end of the muscle. Epimysium, sometimes called the fascia. Perimysium surrounds bundle up to 150 fibers. Bundle called a fasciculi, a fasciculus or a fascicle. Each fiber or cell is surrounded by endomysium. Sarcolemma is under endomysium. The muscle and tendon are attached directly to periosteum. An individual muscle cell is called a muscle fiber because of a highly elongated cell. Fibers are characterized by the presence of numerous nuclei up to 1,000 located at the periphery of the cell. A muscle fiber is enclosed by a plasma membrane called the sarcolemma. Mean is polarized plasma membrane, outside much more positive, inside much more negative. Cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance that surrounds the nucleus of a cell and is sometimes described as the cell matrix. Sarcoplasm is the cytoplasm of a myocyte muscle fiber. It is comparable to the cytoplasm of the cell, but it contains usually large amount of glycosome, so that is granule of stored glycogen, and significant amount of myoglobin. Hemoglobin bind with oxygen, CO2, and etc. and proton, while myoglobin is bind with oxygen only. It supplies hemoglobin along with the blood systematically all over the body, while myoglobin supplies oxygen to muscle only. And red or darker meat is made up of a muscle with fibers that are called slow twitch. These muscles are used for extended period of activity such as standing or walking and need a consistent energy source. The protein myoglobin store oxygen in muscle cell, which use oxygen to extract the energy needed for constant activity. Myoglobin is a rich pigmented protein. The more myoglobin there is in the cell, the redder or darker the meat. So in this case, which meat has more myoglobin? See, it's lots of myoglobin. It's steak, is right. And another one, steak has more creatine and BCAA and more myoglobin. So if you need to choose, right? If you need to choose, you had better choose meat, is right? It's red meat, it's beef. Sarco means flesh or muscular substance. So sarcoplasmic reticulum, intracellular system of closed sac-like membrane involved in the store of intracellular, did you remember? Calcium, right? Calcium in muscle cell. A sarcomere is the basic contractile unit of a muscle fiber, and sarcoplasm is the cytoplasm of a myocyte mean muscle fiber. And this is sarcoplasm comparing cytoplasm of other cell, so it contains large amount of glycogen and myoglobin. And this is sarcolemma, the cell membrane of a muscle cell. The sarcoplasmic reticulum stores calcium, and transverse tubule or T-tubule, which is continuation of sarcolemma, are passes of nerve masses. Muscle fiber or cell contain hundreds and thousands of myofibril. Myofibril made up two proteins which are myofilament actin and myosin. Actin are thinner filaments and myosin are thicker filaments. So muscle fiber, nucleus, sarcolemma, sarcoplasmic reticulum has lots of calcium, T-tubule, phenylcystine is a continuation of sarcoplasmic reticulum, and we call triad. So terminal cystine as well as T-tubule we call triad. Do you know the Japanese gang is we call Yakuza, is right? Is Chinese gang is triad. And how about American gang is I don't know, is Italian's gang or mafia, right? And Korean gang is I think Korean gang is Gondal. But anyway, I just help you to remember triad. Triad is the with T-tubule with terminal cystine. It releases calcium ion, so triad. And these are myofibril, and is important mitochondrion, and this sarcoplasm. Gross structure mean is a structure that can be seen by unaided vision with the naked eye. So does it make sense? Using our naked eye, we can see structure we call gross structure. This is gross structure of skeletal muscle. This is periosteum, epimysium, a single muscle fiber, nuclei, and sarcolemma, which is muscle membrane, right? And sarcolemma on the endomysium, and sarcoplasm, endomysium, fasciculus, perimysium. So class, it will be our quiz question, right? If we are face-to-face class, I strongly ask you to draw this gross structure. But we are asynchronous course this one. So maybe our quiz question is matching or fill in the blank. So does it make sense? So I'll give this kind of quiz question. It's very simple, is right? Yeah, very simple. But for you, please pretend you have a drawing question. So please try to draw several times so it is much easier to understand. Yeah. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Yeah, like this. So how about, anyway, this will be your quiz question. This will be your quiz question this week. When draw this gross structure of skeletal muscle, draw first bone, a bone. And so periosteum is kind of a bone skin, so had a better label close to a bone, not a tendon. And muscle belly surrounded by epimysium, right? And dura fasciculus surrounded by perimysium, and draw a single muscle fiber surrounded by endomysium, sarcolemma on the endomysium, nuclei, and sarcoplasm. The myofibril are composed of individual contractile protein called myofilament. The thin filament is composed mainly of the protein actin. The thick filament is made up chiefly of the protein myosin. And this is connective tissue endomysium. See, it's separate cell. The three types of muscle cells in the body are skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. Skeletal muscle has three layers of connective tissue: epimysium, perimysium, and endomysium. A whole must demonstrate a bundle within a bundle organization: myofilament, myofibril, muscle cell or fiber, fasciculus, and whole muscle. A range of thick and thin myofilaments form light and dark alternating bands along the myofibril. Few of these bands are identified letter Z, I, A, H, M. A band corresponds to the length of thick filament, also called the dark band. I band, the light region of the myofibril, striations that alternate with dark band, A band, contain only the thin filament. The I band's width is the distance between thick filament. Therefore, the I band gets narrower during muscle contraction. H zone is the center of the dark A band, corresponding to the region between thin filament, its width depending upon the degree of muscle contraction. Z-line. The Z-line is a protein disc that anchors the thin filaments and connect agent myofibril. M-line. M-line is a line of the H-zone consisting of protein fibers that connect neighboring myosin filament. Sarcomere. Sarcomere is the contractile unit of that extends from one Z-line to the next, include the entire A-band and half of the I-band to the Z-line on each side of the A-band. The sarcomere contains a specialized arrangement of actin and myosin filament. Please practice drawing and labeling the sarcomere. However, your quiz will be a matching or fill in the blank question, but I strongly recommend you practice drawing and labeling sarcomere. Eccentric contraction occur when the total length of the muscle increases as tension is produced. For example, the lowering phase of a leg press. Exercise constitutes an eccentric contraction. However, a real eccentric contraction is a lengthening muscle contraction occurs when a force applied to the muscle exceeds the momentary force produced by the muscle itself, so resulting in the force lengthening of the muscle tendon system while contracting. In this case, the load is heavier than his one repetition maximum, and Sparta's reduced load, so he could complete concentric contraction. This is really eccentric contraction. In this case, it's same. The load is heavier than his one repetition maximum, and he used a weight release or an eccentric hook, so he could complete concentric contraction. So this is really eccentric contraction. So same case, but this video is about bench press. He used the eccentric hook, so he could complete concentric contraction. A professional bodybuilder used term extra negatives instead of eccentric contraction, and he mentioned some important things. For example, eccentric contraction make more damage to muscle. Did you remember? Satellite cell. So if we make more damage, satellite cell is activated and proliferated and infused to our existing muscle fibers, right? And his extra negative or eccentric contraction seems a force applied to the muscle exceed the momentary force produced by the muscle itself, right? Yeah, it was really good. And our quiz question is like this. So if we have face-to-face class and I would like to ask you draw this like sarcomere and label, but how about we have a quiz on the canvas? So I think you are matching or fill in the blank quiz. And another one, Z line, A band, I band, H zone during concentric contraction, during eccentric contraction. Using arrow, you should show what happened. So G line during concentric is narrow or wider, like this kind of question. So I think it's a G line during concentric contraction is narrower, eccentric wider. And how about A band? This is kind of like axis is right, is a pivot, right? So A band, no change, no change, doesn't matter during concentric or eccentric. And I band and H zone, yeah, same thing occur like a Z line. So I band narrower during concentric, and during eccentric is wider. H zone during concentric narrower, and during eccentric is wider. Yeah, so this is kind of answer of this kind of quiz question. You can use this the last PowerPoint slide so you can practice drawing and labeling. Thank you.